Especially heat.
Yeah, I think it's 108.
Blues there, blues in the middle. Okay, we are good with sound.
And checking for you.
Lucia can't talk during a school board meeting.
I can't go, I know, I'm sorry.
Okay,
That's on.
That's right.
You're nice, you even answered that, I wouldn't.
I had one of the tractors, and it was really fun, but I missed it. It's been a few years.
Yeah. No, I got soaked this year.
Oh, good, yeah.
That goes down to,
Okay. Let's begin. Thank you, everyone who came from the heat to join us. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Let's start with approving the agenda. I would entertain a motion for that.
I move that we approve the agenda.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right.
Cindy and I are gonna be busy tonight.
Yes, you are. We have one signed in visitor. Mrs. Crawford, come on up to the podium.
Pam, were you gonna explain the reason for the change?
Yes, because of House Bill, well, I guess it's Senate Bill 1361. We are making a change, state laws change so that we have discussion before
Any action?
any action items.
But we already always have.
Well, we just had to move it so that it was above the consent agenda.
It's above the
Typically, we do it
consent
after
agenda,
consent.
sorry.
Oh.
But
okay.
we have to do it before action items are taken, and that's the recommendation that we've been given, is have it at the beginning.
And we approve the consent agenda, and that's like regular business, so that's where it needs to go. Does that make sense?
It's
What I
fine.
would like to talk tonight on is public policy 4110.
Okay.
And what I would like to, it says, if I may read it to you, you can address only items that are subject matter identified by the board agenda. Last time when I spoke to the school board, I talked to you about plans and strategies on how we could deal with the overcrowding of schools. That was not on the agenda. And I hope that I'm not reading this incorrectly, but it says that I can only address subject matters identified on the board agenda. And so if that's what it does say, then I cannot speak to you about any other issue that I would like to deal with in the school board. I think our comments are important. We take the time to come to the meeting, and the board has always been receptive to us. If that's what it says, I would like to have the board reconsider the way that the policy 4110 is written.
Thank you.
Thank you, Patty.
Yes, thank you.
So there you go, Mark and Lisa.
Yep, we got that noted.
I appreciate that, because that's not really our practice, because I would love to hear what everybody has to say, because I think it's important. We might not be able to discuss it because it's not on the agenda, but I would certainly hear it.
Well, I thought that people were able to say things before and that we could bring it up at another time. I guess
When you're
I don't
saying
understand.
4110 of the existing policy or the one that we're discussing tonight, 41005? Just so that I have clarification
I
as I'm
just took it
looking.
off
our existing policy.
Our
I'm just on
existing
your
policy.
website, and the
right now.
website says that I can only speak on subject
That's a
matters
great find,
identified
thank
on the
you.
board agenda. I take umbrage with that.
And,
No, it's a good find,
Ms. Wagner,
yes.
in 4105, that'll be, that are.
We're addressing that.
That is something that we can address as we work through the different readings of 4105.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you
Yep.
very much. All right, I
just gonna say, I can see both sides of that. I can see having a policy that helps direct public comments to the relevant issues that we were dealing with at the time, which, there's a certain purpose in that. But I can also see that, as a board, we've made it clear that we'd like to hear what everybody is thinking and what's on their mind. So there's definitely a two-edged sword there. So, but thanks for bringing that up, Patty.
Yeah, it's not on here. It's 05.
Yeah, so, and that's what I'm saying, is 4105 is a companion policy to 4110. And so there will be opportunities for us to address that. And if it can't be addressed specifically in 4105, we can bring 4110 to the board so that adjustments can be made.
Perfect. Thank you. Appreciate that. All right, let's move on to the consent agenda. Is there any discussion there?
No, I already brought up my concern on the change of the
Gotcha.
personnel report, and that got taken care of.
Thank you. All right. So I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
So I'll second that.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Fine.
Aye. All right. I don't know, these two might have something to say. Jake is, just to note, Jake is out of town and Derek's gonna be calling in shortly with us. All right, let's move on to discussion items. Discussion item A, we'll let you, Dr.
Yeah.
Lee, thank you.
We just have 2 trips for some of our fall sports teams that they're looking at. That would be overnight trips or out-of-state trips or both. We have the cross-country team looking to go to Seaside, Oregon. Information was in the packet. Some of the details that are asked for in the document can't be shared because they don't have a team selected, so we don't know the number of students. We don't know then the number of
That's fair.
It says 45.
For cross-country?
well, right.
Number of students involved.
Might be-
On there, it asks for a list of all the students,
Right.
and that's what we can't give you an exact, here's the role of students who are going, nor can we identify necessarily the chaperones, because many of those chaperones will be parents. But we have to wait to make sure that that is cleared up to be specific. But the details of the trip are listed there. And this particular trip would be one that is paid for by fundraisers and existing cross-country funds.
Perfect.
There would be no cost to the students for this particular cross-country trip.
Perfect, you get it, because it's in season and they haven't started their season technically yet.
So why couldn't it have come up? Do they have to be so many days before,
Yeah,
like, our August?
Well, they're trying to set, like, get hotels
Yeah.
and
Oh,
set
okay.
travel
And-
plans, and they
yeah.
can't do that if the board hasn't.
So will we see this in August?
I can bring an update if there's a specific concern that you would like as a board to see beyond what was presented.
I just have a hard time with a one-page thing.
Right.
When from others, you get 3 to 4, maybe 5 to 6.
Right. So
And
one of
more.
the things we would be looking for is the roster
Mhm.
of the students and chaperones.
Chaperones.
And then probably a detailed itinerary. Is that
Mhm.
correct? Okay.
Yes, that would be great.
Yes, please. Sorry.
Okay. The second one is a trip for varsity volleyball. It's a similar situation. I would say we would probably want those same things
Mhm.
for this one. There is, in terms of the cost, I was able to get a couple more details that are not on there in terms of the cost per student, because in the description, it said that there were individual costs. It would be the program and then the individual.
Mhm.
I asked for more clarity on what that amount would be per individual, and that would be $250 per individual. And if a student is not able to pay for that, or a family has concerns with being able to make that, the program and or school will make sure that the student is able to make the trip.
Okay. This is gonna be picky,
No, please.
but I would like it where there could be a place where they print their name.
So you know what the signature
So I know
is.
who they are.
We'll change the form so that's in there.
Okay. Thank you. I read
Yes.
this one, I can tell who is the teacher or coach requesting, but
The coach requesting there is Parker Archibald. Parker,
what here, on this one, on the Seaside one,
yes.
I
that
know,
one.
I can read that.
This one is Parker. Oh, shoot. That was his last
Well, I
name.
just,
Our volleyball coach.
Is his last name Albert?
Albertsons, thank you. Parker Albertsons.
No, that's tennis coach.
Tennis.
That's tennis.
I was like, no, that's not it.
No, okay.
volleyball?
It's okay.
Yes, we'll get that.
Okay,
So my guess is that we would probably want to wait till August to do a final authorization for these. Is that correct?
personally, I would say yes, but then I could be out.
Because they don't have the itinerary.
Well, and the number of male and female chaperones and how many students
Right.
are,
You could table it for
Yeah,
sure.
because August gives them time.
Yep.
would it interfere with them trying to do what they need to do to get
No,
ready? Okay.
no, because if I let them know that the primary concern is that we don't have this information, I think that's going to be something that allows them to see what they need to do to move forward.
Okay,
They
Thank
probably
you.
won't start their fall practice till mid-August anyway,
Correct. Well,
No,
the
August
second
12th.
week of August.
about the same time as our next.
Yeah,
board meeting.
exactly.
Yeah.
Any other questions on the trips?
thank you.
So we just don't need to take any action on that.
Yeah, when we get to that point in the action.
Perfect. All right, let's move on to discussion item B.
Okay, this is a new club request from Middleton High School. And this is a different club request than we've received in the past, so we may need just to have a little bit of legal guidance. But we do. Are you folks here for to talk
Timing.
trap shooting club? Okay, well, this is the time. If you wouldn't mind coming up to the podium and introducing yourselves, we do have some folks here to talk about this club. And I'll just give a couple of details that they're requesting to start a trap shooting club, which is something that there are other schools within the state of Idaho that have these clubs already. And they're going to give us some details on that. I let them know that there might be some legal things that we still want to dot some i's and cross some t's on, but I think tonight's a great opportunity to get some understanding about what this club would entail for Middleton High School students.
Perfect.
We'll turn the floor over to you, and we've got that presentation up there if you need to guide us to any specific area. Mrs. Pennington here at the desk can run that, so.
So we're trying to get the Middleton High School.
If you wouldn't mind introducing yourself first so that the,
Blake McCutcheon, I'm a senior this year.
Would you say that again, please?
Blake McCutcheon,
Blake, okay.
yeah, I'm a senior this year. So we're trying to get the Middleton High School under the USA Play Target League, and that's where all the high schools compete with other high schools throughout the country. And it's actually a pretty neat program. It's one of the safest in the country. And I think there's been, I don't know the number of shoots, but there's never been an accident ever in this whole league through the whole time it's been ran. So if you go to the next slide.
Cause I just scrolled.
no, you gotta click on start the presentation. I think that's, right there.
There.
And we won't necessarily need to go through the whole thing, so if you'll just direct us to those parts that are,
Alright, so there's the numbers on all the participation in the league.
You wanna just highlight that stuff, Blake, or what do you want me to do? Give a presentation, buddy. Well, I know you thought you were
You're- what's-
answering questions,
what-
and now you're gonna give a
Let me help you a little bit.
presentation.
What do you like about it? What intrigues you about it?
For me, trap shooting is just an amazing sport that I wanna share with everybody. As many people as possible to me, cause it's amazing. It's a mental game. It builds character. It's just it's so fun.
And there's some criteria you have to go through to do that, correct? What does that criteria look like?
Regarding what, like participation?
Mm-hmm.
Should be in here.
You want me to go to about the league or how it works?
That might
I
be
think it's
good.
under how it works, yeah. So you have to go under what variation of the trap you want. So there's trap, ski, sporting clays, and five stand.
Okay.
Probably just focus on trap and sporting clays for the most part. There's some five stand over at Weezer, but it's a little bit of a drive, so.
Where do you guys
Yeah, where-
intend to practice or shoot?
So I've done a lot of research and I think Boise Trap Club is the best. It's off of Cunamore Road.
I know where that's.
So, can I help you? Yeah. So, I don't wanna step on his toes at all. So I'm Dad, I'm Chris McCutcheon. Blake's been shooting trap, well, he started as a trap shooter through this league, in Bend, Oregon, before we moved over here. And he actually started as an 8th grader, which this league offers. So it was a high school program ran through Mountain View High School in Bend, Oregon. And Mountain View opened it up to all of the high schools within the region. And that allowed kids from, I think 4 different high schools at that point to come in and they practiced. It was one team, but they were actually able to letter for their individual high schools through this program. And that came with an average score through practices. And if you hit a certain objective, then you were able to letter as a varsity trap shooter. And all of this stuff is built into this program. So this program in particular is really plug and play for a high school. All of the insurances and all of the legalities and everything are already taken care of within USA Sporting. So those things, you can have the legal department obviously look through them,
Right.
but they're going to go, okay,
Mhm.
This has all been done. It's been done for years. I don't know if you saw that, the one little graph that popped up at first. There's been over 22 million targets thrown through this program. And like Blake highlighted, there's been no injury, nothing. It's very safe. It's guided by adults. And as far as Bend Trap Club goes, they're very welcoming and very encouraging for youth shooters. Most trap clubs are. Blake had traveled, contacted the board of directors at Caldwell Trap Club, Weezer Trap Club, Boise Trap Club. And unfortunately, it seems like Caldwell is just not being super supportive in the trap world right now. They're very occupied with sporting clays only. And their prices are really a lot higher than Weezer and Boise. So that kind of helped him narrow it down. Do you want to say more?
Could I ask a question about could you describe what that would be or how the organization helps it be a safe experience for our students? Because I think that's probably going to be the number one question that gets asked is how do we keep safe? How does this organization do it so that they shot all those clays without ever having an accident.
Yeah.
Well, and the other question is kind of a threshold question. What's the difference between, yeah, you guys get in a group, you drive clear over there to the other side of CUNA and you do this as a group, as opposed to, okay, this is the official club of the high school. What are the benefits and why should we approve the club membership or the club organization?
Do you want to take one at a time?
Yeah, probably.
Okay.
So when we're at a club, there's a lot of very high-ranking adults that supervise everybody shooting, and they've been in the trap world for 10, probably close to 20 years at least, all of them at least. And they are very knowledgeable, and they can help out the students that are struggling with targets and getting their shooting good. That's probably a poor explanation, sorry.
No, that's
You're
good.
okay.
Yeah, that's great.
But, so, maybe walk through an experience a student has as they walk in for a practice. Like, what checks do you do? What checks do the adults do to make sure that students are behaving safely?
So it's been a while since you were at Mountain View. So he shoots trap competitively now. That was an experience that he gained from shooting through this league.
Mhm.
And there wasn't a league here for him to shoot out of for high school. I think that's why you really want to do this, is to offer that. Mountain View, you remember, you were an 8th grader, so you learned. Okay, so typically what happens is individual students would travel to their destination, right? So I would think that if this does gain legs, and we obviously hopes it does, we would probably you have a coach that has agreed to be a coach at Middleton High School, correct?
That is Trent Harrison, by the way.
Okay, so within that, there would be, I'm sure, safety guidelines and techniques and breakdowns of everything prior to even going to a trap club, right? The thing about, and it's unfortunate in this day of age that we have this hang up about firearms in schools, right? It has validity, but there's also this whole other world that has continued to thrive and survive and move through all of these legal things that we have to deal with now. But when he was at Mountain View, obviously he wasn't driving at that point, he was an 8th grader. So we would transport him to Redmond Trap Club. And the coaches were there and they're, ready to help and answer questions. And obviously there's always a safety briefing prior to, they check the guns, make sure they're cleared when they arrive and before they leave.
The adults do that.
Yeah, the adults do that.
Okay.
And it's all about safety. Everything is about safety. Everybody understands the time that we live in now, but it's in these shooting sports worlds, it's always been about safety. That's why you never hear about things happening within a shooting environment
Right.
that's like this or anything else, handguns or long range rifles, any of that. So, it's very, very rare that you have anything that happens. And like that was, 22 million target. I didn't even know that. 22 million targets, wow.
That's a lot.
This kid shot over 30,000 targets in the last 3 years. And he's leaving for Montana tomorrow morning to go compete in Montana and then to Oregon and then back to Illinois. So
Wow.
That's great.
Good luck.
Yeah, so, but yeah, so does that help with
Yeah, no,
the safety aspect? Now, can you repeat your question?
Yeah, I can understand, there being a lot of interest, although it's a little tangential because there's not a shooting club, there's not a shooting range around here.
Right.
So why should the high school sanction the shooting club group? What's the benefits to you guys and what's the benefits to the school?
So let me answer and you can put your 2 cents in, okay? So I would say what's to be gained is either A, there's kids that don't know anything about shotguns. and they have a desire to learn, or there's a lot of families around this community that hunt, that bird hunt especially. And what would you say that this has done with your bird hunting skills?
Oh, it's drastically improved.
Okay, so there's that for the student, right?
Muscle
There's
memory.
also, we have all of these, organized sports. Our other son is a baseball player, and, there's baseball, football, track, all of these things, even rugby now. For those kids that don't really fit into those kind of groups and they're more outdoorsy, this gives them an outlet to do something that's more up their alley to do, right?
Mhm.
But does school need to provide funding for any of the activities of the club?
So I don't believe so. If
It would be all
this
raised.
kid gets a club acceptance, what we did in Bend is we went out and we fundraised, the team fundraised. We have some connected parents, as I'm sure we do here, that help drive donations, either in the form of shotgun shells. A lot of the adults around in the past club, if a kid didn't have a shotgun and he still wanted to do this, then they were able to borrow a shotgun and use it. This isn't a cheap ordeal by any means, but this community rallies around and comes together. I think that's a really cool part about being involved with it. The other benefit, before I get to you, this allows another segment of your students to be able to gain a letter. Letter in a sport.
Sure.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
He lettered as an 8th grader. His average was higher than he was able to shoot on the varsity team. He's the only kid that's ever shot on the varsity team out of Mountain View that wasn't actually in high school. So that was pretty
Wow.
cool.
What kind of interest, your friends that have you talked to your friends?
Yeah.
Do you have an idea of the number?
How you gained interest?
Yeah, so I made a Google form that I posted throughout the school, got it approved by the MHS administrators. And I've got probably 50 plus kids that
I would imagine so.
That's
The
great.
hunting-
totally join it.
Are there prerequisites, like to be a part of that? Is there something you have to
So
do?
there's a fee for the
League, target league.
Okay,
and they have to pay that, and they can join it, have a membership there, and they can get their safety glasses, ear pro, eye pro, and they just need to,
is there any training they need to have?
the training will be provided through the coaches and then the track clubs too.
Okay.
Does Mr. Harrison have any training?
Yeah, I've actually gave them a couple pointers.
He's been trained.
I'm just curious if he does
Yeah,
track shooting.
he's very outdoorsy. He
Okay.
likes hunting and all that. He wants to get more into it. That's why he was intrigued on wanting to coach the team. And I've had Emily Troutman reach out to me and ask if I needed any help. And Dr. Ross, she wanted to know how she could help out too. So I've got 3 teachers in the MHS that would totally help out with it.
Cool.
Guys, any more?
Thank you, guys.
Yes, thank you very
Yeah, I
much.
think it's a great idea.
So what we'll do, and I guess I only have one other question. Is there any part of that website or the presentation that you would like us to direct our legal team to? Just so, because I know there were some pieces of that, but beyond what's in this presentation, because I can find that piece, is there any other piece that would be important, you feel, for our legal team to take a look at and make sure?
I would say probably the safest sport portion,
Yeah,
the shooting range portion, and
Maybe the
probably the tournaments portion.
okay,
So one more just quick thing, so the culmination of this, so you can, through this Clay Target League, you can run a spring and a fall segment. And I don't know how much it is, sorry. But well, I wanna say it was $50 per the season, but that might have been what Mountain View in Bend was charging to kind of help like offset some target or, target fees at clubs. Because we do have to pay for the targets that are thrown, right? So that might have been what they did. There you go, by team. So that's a good way to look at it too. Anyways, there's a state competition and Idaho has it. He went to the Oregon State one, but remember I said that he had to be in, I think it was like 86% of targets broken or whatever to be on that varsity level team, to compete at that varsity level. But they have varsity level and junior varsity levels at the state competitions. And these kids, they go through this program and they go to practices and they get their, all this is documented by the coach, of how much targets they broke throughout the season, and that gives them their average, and they're either gonna land in varsity or JV, and they can go to state and compete. And it's pretty cool, the team has a stake in state, and then the individuals also have a stake in state. So there's a couple of different routes that they can earn different levels in the state. So I just wanted to touch on that.
Well, and also underneath resources, it does have a coach education and support program, as well as a coach leadership and safety support class certification.
And I would imagine that those are the things that have to be I's dotted,
In
T's
place,
crossed,
yeah.
right? I mean, this
Okay.
is all new, like for us as well, because we've only been on the other side of it.
Uh-huh.
But, this was important for him to carry forward to the school and to you guys. So I would imagine that those are requirements by the coaches, to be able to do
Whatever.
that and
Okay,
have everything
Yeah,
dialed in,
right.
because
so to
this
speak.
this presentation looks very informative.
It
as far
is,
as
and I would
everything.
highly encourage you guys to just go dive in and go through the whole thing. I know you've gone through it all.
Yeah.
I haven't even looked at it. I've been.
Well, this says impeccable safety. and-
Yeah, I've gone into it. But
Those are things you can't false advertise in the show.
No, and
I just want you to
here's one
understand
thing that I like on there though, and I don't know if I didn't look at that part, but I'm looking at a different part where it says firearm safety certification is required for
Yeah.
all athletes. So I think that's important
Yeah,
for
and
people
that's
to
what
know.
I thought, and I just didn't want to step into it.
No,
and
I
go,
think
I
that's-
think this is.
No, you're right.
But
Yeah,
I believe that all of the students have to go through that.
they
When they
should.
join,
Yes.
and the coaches have to as well.
Yes.
And I
Yeah.
vaguely remember that he's gonna be a senior, he was an 8th grader.
Goes by fast.
So, yeah, it does, and there's been a lot of stuff in between, right? So, but I vaguely remember going through that with
Coach for
him.
every team.
And I think it's mostly all digital, and then when you get in front of the coach, you have to kind of show them.
I think so. And I
You have
think
to name the parts of
I
the
think
gun,
somewhere
how the
on there
guns
I saw
work, and-
you can do hunter's ed too. That counts.
Yes,
Which I'm
yes.
sure a lot of people already have that, right? A lot of youth, so.
Right. Yeah, especially here where we live.
Yep, absolutely.
Middleton, I mean, it's a great community.
Yeah.
So this is
Yes.
maybe a silly question, but trap shooting, clay shooting, and skeet shooting.
Yes,
You hit the same thing?
they all, they're similar.
She needs a
You can
teacher.
explain that.
I mean, I know what the clay is, because.
So yeah, they all throw clays, but it's how they come out. Go ahead.
Oh,
So, skeet shooting there's 2 big houses and then there's 7 stations throughout the track field. And when you're skeet shooting, one comes out of one house and you're on one of the stations and you're trying to hit one coming out of this house, one coming out of this house, and then it's a true pair, which both come at the same time.
I see.
It's a pretty interesting thing. And then
Yeah.
there's one trap house and there's 5 different stations. And the trap house throws one of the 5 directions for the clay. And that's out of 100 usually, in what I shoot, but I think it's 50 for this to qualify. And then there's 5 stand, which there's 5 stands that are all in a straight line, and then there's trap throwers, which throw clays different directions. It's basically dove hunting or dove hunting. It's really cool.
Yeah.
And then sporting clays is similar to five stand, but there's a whole course that you can go through.
Oh, okay.
And it's basically five stand, but in one station, then you walk probably 20 feet to 24 feet. And it's a whole different setup, and it's just super amazing.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
luck tomorrow.
Yes, good luck.
Thank you. And I'll work with Mr. Hollinger to make sure that if there's any other information we need to get with you. All right?
Awesome.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you guys.
Thank you. All right, let's move on to discussion item C. Is that gonna be Mrs. Pennington?
Yes.
So these were the handbooks that we didn't present at the last board meeting. So all the principals went through, when you look at Heights and Purple Sage, very similar to Mill Creek, those elementaries aligned fairly well. We were able to go through all of these handbooks and ask to have the links added that you guys had asked at the last meeting, so you should all see the links to bus company, food service, especially since we offer these digitally during registration. So
Yeah.
those links should be provided. Outside of that, there weren't a ton of changes in the MHS student handbook or the academy student handbook. Slight changes, obviously years, if there's been policy changes or attendance changes, some of those things, but very minimal changes to most of the handbooks this year. Are there any
Perfect.
specific questions you had for any of those?
Mhm. Do you have any, Cindy?
No.
How about you, Jay?
No, unless there was anything that anybody was concerned about, but
No?
I think I would just ask if there's other links that you wanted us to add that we don't have in there yet. If you let us know, we're able to do that as well.
Okay. You have a question?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
For working on those.
Yeah.
Let's move on to discussion item D. Dr. Gee, that's you.
So, last October, after an RFP process, we looked at, we contracted with Applied Concept Security to provide a security officer at each of our 3 elementary schools. That started in October and ran through the end of the year. When we made that original agreement, it was determined that we would have a discussion as a board about whether or not that was something we wanted to renew with, we gave the opportunity to renew with Applied Concept Security. We've done some review of that program. I wanted to go through a little bit of that, what the estimated cost would be for this coming school year, and just give an opportunity to for you to ask any questions that you might have. At the end, if you feel comfortable as a board, we can move. You can authorize me to enter into those negotiations with Applied Concept Security. Primarily, when I say negotiations, it's just making sure that dates and times line up. There would not be substantive changes to the actual contract. But I wanted to just walk through a little bit. We did have the 3 armed security guards at each of the schools. We had an opportunity for those security officers to receive or to be introduced to our parents and staff members that were there, the students. We had each of the schools went about that a little bit differently. As they worked through, certainly there were a few bumps along the way as we got to understand how those would work within the schools.
there was one person.
One per school. But what we found and what the reports we got back from each of the schools gave an indication that they would prefer continuing with this program. I just wanted to read through a few of the comments that this came primarily from our principals, but some from parents as well. This is at Heights. At Heights, we really appreciated the extra sense of safety that our security officer provided. We ended the year with and named the officer as our guard, and he was so great to work with. I received several comments from parents that also appreciated the extra sense of comfort that our security team gave them. And I'm going to go through some of those supportive statements, and then I want to go through there weren't negative statements as much as here's some things we would think could be better as we move forward. I feel that that parents appreciated having the security guard in the building, and that the teachers like the idea. All in all, we see positives with this program. Overall, this is a very successful program, a valuable asset to our school and community. Feel that we've established a great line of communication. I cannot imagine not having this asset in our district. Strongly recommend that we continue. This is one of the principals speaking, and actually said I'd be a proponent of expanding this program to the secondary schools as well, if there were ever the resources to do so. Talking about the officer at Purple Sage has been able to establish healthy relationships with students, staff, and parents, and maintaining an appropriate level of professionalism and vigilance. So overall, very positive comments coming back. In looking at ways to improve, this is some of the comments that were given. Look for opportunities to meet as an elementary admin team and just maybe once a trimester to just discuss how it's working. Two of the three principals talked about just having a better understanding of lines of communication and supervisory and evaluative decisions. If there's something, a piece that is going to be evaluated, who's responsible for evaluating? Is there a piece that we're expecting the principal to provide to supervision at Applied Concept Security? If there are the communication, if we were looking for who do we communicate to if there's a problem, having those outlined and more concrete is something that they would like. But they said these things while saying we feel like we want to see this continue. These are just things that would improve the overall process.
Did you get input from the actual armed individual that was there, their perception of how long went?
From two of the three, we did. And their responses were along the lines similar to the school in terms of the communication. They would like to see a greater level of communication between the schools, and not just the schools. For them, they'd like to see it to include our emergency operations team, so that there was, which is, one of our school committees that we have with our police chief, our SROs, fire chief, all of those. And they'd like to be more involved there, just so that they have a feel of what needs to happen should an emergency and what their role would be in those situations.
I think that's a great idea, because I just assumed they would be.
Well, and they've been a part, they just have not been an active sitting member of that committee. For instance, over the next couple of days, our resource officers are conducting trainings up at our high school for lockdowns and things like that. Several of these.
For who? Staff?
Well, they're doing it primarily for the officers, the police officers.
Oh.
But our security officers are actually participating with them in that training.
And we're looking for
So-
volunteers, Cindy, to be.
Yeah, if you want to go and be
You wanna
a
go be a victim.
volunteer in a lockdown.
I could
Right?
learn from that.
And we're providing lunch on Wednesday.
For reals.
Are all three coming back, just saying?
No, there is one that started the year last year, but chose to go a different route. We have one, and then the supervisor, we had two subs. They stepped in to fill that void until the end of the year, but they've made additional hires this summer. So we'll have an additional staff member, at least one, but we anticipate just the one that would be different from who we had last year. But we'll still go through the process of introductions and all that if the board chooses to approve moving
What
forward.
particular comments did any of the parents make?
The comments, those were comments that specifically came to me. And it was mostly as we
Thank you.
started the program, and they were
Thank you.
universally saying,
I got thank yous.
Thank you.
Yeah.
saying, we appreciate that the board was willing to invest the dollars to make that happen. Just, it gave, similar to what the principal said, it gave an added layer of
Peace of mind.
peace of mind.
Yeah.
It's always tough though. It's like insurance. If you never use it, you have to, wow, you wonder if you
Right.
really need it. And
Right.
obviously there was not a security incident in
No, there
the
was not.
school, or we would have heard about it, but I mean.
Gee, knock on wood.
Yes, I know, yeah.
But was there, never mind, go on.
Well, and I never received, because we were very public and sent it out to all the parents, letting them know prior to them stepping on campus. And I never received any notification from a parent saying, I'm concerned about taking this step.
Great.
There was not, and that's not to say that there aren't parents out there that might have that thought, but none reached out to express that to me.
Well, it's a tough deal because statistically, the chances of having a security thing are extremely low. But if it does happen, it's an extremely overwhelming situation.
Right.
So it's one of those deals where it's like, you spend this money on something hopefully never use.
Right.
Chances are in 1,000 years, we never need it. But I guess,
I'm okay with
people
spending the money.
have it.
Yeah.
And they feel better having
I
it.
live by Purple Sage. It's pretty isolated.
Yeah, but
There's not much. Well, there's a golf course. Golfers will come over with their golf clubs and save the kids.
yeah.
So if I could speak a little bit to the cost, this year we started in October, so we didn't have a full year. We made 3 different payments, and if I could ask Ms. Krantz to jump in if I make any errors here, but we made 3 different payments, one of $39,000, one of $36,000, and one of $54,000. So for a overall, I want to make sure I get this correct. 1 second.
About 125.
About 125 to 130,000 for a full year at that rate, for 144 days. So they would be there for every single day. We would be looking at an overall cost of $157,482, which is actually below what we had established as our cap by about 30,000.
I was gonna say, was it 190?
It was 185.
185, okay.
Well, and a nice way to measure that would be against like catastrophic insurance, something that you'd never use. How much do we spend a year on insurances?
Yeah.
Concurrent.
A lot.
Alicia.
Yeah,
It just keeps going up, though. That's a
It
problem.
does keep going up, you're right.
just liability insurance is what, a couple $100,000?
Yeah.
And so all the insurances are probably what, 400,000 or 500,000.
This year, we're at 240,000, which is almost a 30% increase from last year.
245.
Oh
So if
my
you
gosh.
figure this as just another form of insurance, 154,000 for the year, it's kind of in line
Right.
with that. It seems reasonable in that regard.
So my recommendation would be that we, that as a board and as a school district, we continue with this, and we would, if you as a board approve that, then what I would do is just you're approving me to enter into negotiations with Applied Concept Security so that we are
Get it rolling.
able to get it rolling for the first day of school.
Perfect.
Yeah. It's one of those things where God forbid if something did happen and we didn't have the security, everybody like up in arms, like, oh my God, I can't believe you guys didn't have, security and everybody else does. So you're almost forced into it.
Actually, there's only a few of us in the state that have it, right?
Yeah.
Only a
Yeah,
few.
that's At least 5 or 6 that have an additional private security, so.
Is it mainly at the elementary?
Yeah, mostly at the secondary level, we look at
SROs, yeah.
resource officers, primarily because of the legal aspect that a lot of those situations take on.
Yes,
Gotcha.
thank you.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to discussion item E. Rec Center.
Okay. So on the rec center, we delivered and this is more a report than anything. We delivered the contract that you approved last month. There were two, let me just bring it up so I make sure I walk through each change, just so you understand that it's not a huge change.
It's on the, it's attached. I don't know.
Okay, so we had one area where we had mislabeled Greater Middleton area rec district because we'd included park in there, but that's actually not part of their official name. So we had to fix that in the contract. There was an area where we had left a dollar figure off, where we were insuring the Fine Arts Center against major structural and catastrophic failure, but we had put in there in quotations, do we need to put a dollar amount? And we'd left that text in there. Yeah, so there won't be a dollar amount for that.
And that's on the,
That's on
Liability.
paragraph 3, section B.
Page 2,
okay,
I think.
for liability
Yes.
policy, okay.
Yes, and so that's us, that as a district, we carry structural and catastrophic insurance on the rec center. So that if something huge were to happen like that, our insurance is going to take care of that. Whereas the other area that we made the change to is the most substantial is paragraph 8 of section A, which is highlighted on that document that is attached. And what we had there was actually $1 million of liability insurance that we were asking the Parks and Rec to follow, but it should be 500,000.
Okay.
And the reason is that ICRIMP, which is the insurance carrier for counties and public entities, would not give them above that for the situation that they're in. So that they're holding the maximum that they can. So those are the only adjustments besides putting the names at the bottom of the board members that would be signing. And so unless there's concerns with that, that's for your information, we made those adjustments. All other aspects of that contract remain the same.
Oh, no action item on that.
There wouldn't be an action item.
Okay.
Perfect.
Good.
Any questions?
Looks good. I just,
Okay.
No.
Just wanted to make sure that you had all those details just in case there were any questions.
Well, thank you for making sure that's intact. All right, let's move on to discussion item F, school
Okay.
facilities funding.
So this is the school facilities funding that came from the legislation this year. And I just wanted to kind of give an update on the steps that we need to take in order to request those funds from the state of Idaho, so that you as a board are aware of what we're doing in preparation, hopefully for the August board meeting, but it might have to be September, just depending on when we can get some of the information. But the first thing we have to do is conduct a facility condition assessment. And with results entered into what they are calling the MAPS software. That MAPS, M-A-P-P-S software is software that is being provided by the state at no cost to the districts. But we are required to utilize that in our submission process. So just so that you kind of get a feel for what that means, this binder, and I brought just as so you kind of have to see it to feel it. In 2020, Design West, together with our maintenance department, went through all of our facilities and essentially broke down all the parts that were needing attention. significant maintenance attention. What you have here is that report as a whole. And, you know, and that's going through, and some of these pages are, this is a system, everything checks out okay, but they were very comprehensive in what they did. And it was as a part of the 10-year planning cycle of, here are the things you need to be looking at over the next 10 years. So what we attached to the board agenda, and what you have in a hard copy in front of you, is a summary of those pieces, and that is under there. Yeah. So if we can walk down, if you look at each column there, you have the facility, and then you have the priority level. If it is a 1, that's a high priority. If it's a 4, it's a low priority. And this was based on Design West engineers plus our maintenance staff making those recommendations. Now, this was done in 2020, so many of the things on this list have actually been completed already.
That's what I wanted to know, how many of this 96 of them.
Right, so what I'll be meeting with Bill Bass tomorrow. He has been walking through all of these to make sure he can identify, here's things that have been done. If they're only partially done, he's going to be marking that. We've got our building principals doing the same thing with this list to make sure, one, go through and say, here are the things that are done, but also if there are things that have developed since 2020 that have revealed as, here's an issue we need to be addressing, they'll be adding that.
Good.
So then we take this information, both what was presented by Design West and what we add to that through Bill and our building principals, and then we put all of that into the MAP software. And so that is part of number 1, conducting that facility condition assessment and with results entered into the MAP software. And what that's going to do is it's going to break it down by different categories: HVAC, roofing, interiors, exteriors, grounds, things like that. And it's going to give us an estimated cost to be able to address those issues, so that we as a board can look at that and look at the facilities dollars that we're given and be able to make a plan that addresses the issues that are being made. Now, there's allowances within, once we put all that in, the next step is to complete a 10-year plan. Now, that 10-year plan is not just these fixing these things, but it can also include new buildings.
Mm-hmm.
So if we were going to take any of those funds and include that in the elementary school, we would be including that in our 10-year plan. And that all gets uploaded into the MAPS software. Now, once we have a 10-year plan, that has to be approved by the school board in order to be, for us to be able to move forward. Excuse me.
You're good.
And then there is a signature page, and that's just some things saying we understand that we have to abide by the rules of how the funds can be spent. We understand these pieces. So that's kind of a formality. And then there's a completion of narrative questions, and you have those questions right there talking about population trends, changing preferences in the school district and how we deliver education, which might be changing how might be an explanation as to why some things are a priority and some are not. If we were looking at, this is a silly one, but the old overhead transparency projectors, if we were saying we're making a shift from those to all being, smart televisions that we're going to be using, well, that's a significant educational change that may be something that we could use. Now, I'm not saying that that's what we would be using. That's just
Do we use those in the elementaries?
the
Smart TVs?
we have some
Okay.
in some of the classrooms. And then outline anticipated new construction. So we would need to complete that. Once we've completed all of those things, we put it all into that MAP software. essentially hit submit. And then that is us then requesting funds from the state. The board would, as part of that 10-year plan, indicate whether they would be taking that as the lump sum or on the annual payments. We've worked with Michael Keith with Zions Bank. Typically with financial planning, we've worked with, help me,
Eric Carringer,
with,
Piper Sandler.
from Piper Sandler. Eric Herringer with Piper Sandler is actually representing the state with all of these bonds and indicated that it wouldn't be appropriate for him to advise us when he's also advising the state on their side.
Right, that makes sense.
So we've reached out to Michael Keith, who actually used to work with Eric Herringer at what it used to be Piper Jaffray. He's since moved and is operating the same role with Zions Bank. So we met with Alicia, Lisa and I met with him today, asking him to bring all of the different things that the board should consider from the financial side of things as we are putting that 10-year plan together. And so we'll be having a report from him in August as well. But that's kind of the move we're looking at. We would like to be part of some of the initial groups that are requesting those funds, knowing that the state may end up doing those in phases. The sooner the funds are here, the sooner we can get moving on some of the projects that we'd like to do on. So any questions about the facilities bill and how we're proceeding?
No, I appreciate all the work being done. Very,
Yeah, I'm anxious to see what else changed or what's
Right.
been done.
Right,
And the fact that we only had 1-4.
right. And most of these things are important that are on the list.
Yeah.
yes.
They are,
Yeah,
kind of,
they didn't really mess with the 4s. There probably could have been even more 4s,
yeah.
but
Well, that's why I was wondering if since 2020, if some of the 3s now are.
correct. And that's something that I've asked the principals and our maintenance staff to evaluate is, would you move some of these things from their current priority level to a different priority level? So that's something that they're considering as well.
Some of the most expensive things have been done, like haven't we done the HVAC at Purple Sage?
Some of the
Some of
HVAC,
Some.
yeah, there's still some HVAC to work on there. But the roofing at Heights has been done.
The turf's been done.
The turf has been done. There've been some bigger ticket items taken care of, yes. So if there's no other questions, that's all I have to.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Let's move on to discussion item G.
Okay, and that is the request for proposal regarding our CTE building. As we looked at the request last month, not a lot has changed except there's been a suggestion that we move back towards the amount, closer to the amount that was originally outlined in the grant. The original grant looked at $1.125 million in order to help us build this building. When you look at that 1.125, in talking with some construction folks within the area, they felt like if we were able to just say at 1.5, that the district was willing to put just that little extra, that would give a baseline for our RFP to request the proposals from these design builders. And what I mean by a baseline is if there were additional dollars that were able to be put forward, for instance, if you as a board chose to add those could be added on the way that the RFP is written. But saying you have 1.5 million, what can you give us for that gives us a better feel for what kind of work and what kind of bang for our buck we can get from the different builders. And then once you've established that with someone on a shorter or a smaller amount, if they can give us a substantial building for that smaller amount, if we were able to give additional dollars, we know that they have the ability to use that more efficiently. So the biggest change would be lowering that amount from the 2.625 million to the 1.5 million as being the funds available for the project. And then we would likely pull out any references to the auto tech as a primary piece of what we're trying to get done this time around. It wouldn't mean that we would abandon auto tech and that it wouldn't be mentioned in the RFP, but as being the primary focus of the build. The primary focus would be if we went through this RFP with a lower amount, the construction shop with a classroom area for the
And when you say the 2.625,
625.
that's a grant. That's,
1.125 of that is a grant. The rest of that, as we had discussed, was going to come from these facilities dollars. And so pulling that back puts us back in closer in line with what we would be receiving from the state already
so the grant money is specifically
for the CTE
for
building.
CTE. You
Can't use it for anything
anything
else.
else.
Correct. And it has to be for the construction program.
Mhm.
We wouldn't be able to go and build a nursing building, even though it's CTE. It has to, because we said this is what we would be building.
Oh, yeah, it's government dollars. You ask for it, it
Correct.
has to go to what it's,
So it's specifically.
yeah,
Yeah.
earmarked for,
So
yeah.
lowering that from 1.4 million to about 350,000 for
The additional
our
amount.
additional amount. Yeah.
Lowering this down to 1.5.
Yeah, because you still have about 300,000 that you've got to put in there to get it to the 1.5.
Okay.
But other than that, we had our attorneys take a look at the RFP. They had a few minor details that we needed to adjust, which I've adjusted. And we've also had a soils report, or the soils test has been done. We're awaiting the report. Alicia, have we received any word on when we'll get that report?
I have not, but I'll touch base tomorrow.
So, but either way, we'll put a note in with the RFP that a soils report will be available. We've had the testing done already. So that just allows that, if there's additional cost because of how the soil is, we want them to be able to address that as they're doing it. So nobody's surprised by the cost.
And the 2 points is from the,
It's just 2.625 was just a number we threw out last time as a way of saying, this is what we could do. But as we talked go ahead.
from where?
So 1.125 of it is from the grant.
Right.
The rest would have had to have come from the facilities dollars.
Okay, which we're not gonna do.
Which, at that amount,
Okay.
We're
correct.
gonna just, yeah. the low
Okay.
amount.
Lowering that way down from what we originally.
So the total would be 1.5 versus the total of 2 point.
Or the total
Okay.
from us being
I
one.
just wasn't sure with that
Yep.
big lump of money.
Yeah, and it was just a way of, it was a way of demonstrating how we could use the facilities dollars if that was a decision the board went with. But as we looked at it, it's not to say that the board should or shouldn't. It's just that as we create the RFP, doing that at a 1.5 gives us a better gauge of what abilities those builders have and what they'll bring to the table.
Oh, okay, because we
Mhm.
haven't done the art.
No, that's what
To see it?
that's what you're approving.
Okay, to do one
To do is the RFP
at that amount.
at that amount. And then we will publish that for tomorrow, essentially. And then we move out 30 days and we come back and we're then as a group evaluating the proposals that have come in.
Okay, thank you. Okay, sorry.
That's a
No, you're okay.
nice round number, just to pitch in another 300,000 to that 1.125 to get us up to that 1.5. It's a nice workable number to get
Okay.
proposals from.
Yeah. Any other questions? Because that is something that we'll need to have an action item to approve this RFP.
Thank you. All right. Are you ready, Mrs. Pennington?
Right. Are you guys ready?
You are on with some fun policy.
Okay.
Can I ask one question?
Absolutely.
It says first reading.
Yes,
Some of these can go to second reading if we
I
want.
would recommend all of them.
Okay, good. Thank you.
There's a lot of.
So,
Change.
kind of to start, so you guys know ISBA came out with 2 updates recently, which is why we're seeing a bulk number of policies. And many of those came in their 3rd update, and that has to do with law changes that happened during the legislative session.
Okay,
So that's why we would normally not put this many in front of you, and we actually have pared this down quite a bit to what we're gonna have to do.
okay. I'm just glad you weren't at my house when I looked at
I'm sure.
this.
You're probably like, wait.
So you
what?
know, what we've tried to pull out is what ISBA is saying is priority, which they've identified as the most important and need the most immediate attention. So all of these are marked priority except for the first one, which was 9100, but we left that on there per the conversation we had at the last board meeting around disposal of materials valued under a certain amount of money. So, given the conversation with the board last meeting, we thought it was important to keep that on there, so you saw we were doing that work around that policy as well.
Okay.
Perfect, thank you.
So with that 9100, it would be an update. We would replace our current policy 9022 with ISBA's most current policy. And so the numbers are a little bit wonky here because our old policy, the 9000s, we haven't updated fully to ISBA's yet. So our old policy that this would replace would be 9022.
So when you say, this would be 9022?
9100 is gonna replace 9022, which is the current policy we operate off of.
Okay, so, okay, I'm trying to put this the right way. They're our policies.
Correct. So
As a school district.
9022 is what we've currently adopted as a school district.
Okay,
9100 is ISBA's number that they call that same policy. So 9100 is ISBA's number. So if we adopt their version, we would change the number to 9100.
It would just throw out.
And I think another thing to throw out there as far as how we operate, ISBA is all about recommendations.
Mhm.
None of these things are things that we have to do it the way they operate. They do a lot of the work for us in getting what comes from legislation into a workable policy format, because legislation doesn't read like policy.
No,
And it doesn't apply specifically to buildings and districts and schools.
okay.
So when we look at what ISBA brings in, what we're trying to do is say, okay, here's what they would recommend. How does this work best for Middleton?
Okay.
And so once we do it, it is now our policy.
so hence all the lines
Okay.
and the new words.
But I guess what concerns me is you're saying it's ISBA's number.
Yes.
It's just their
In
numbering system.
It's their numbering system for their model policy manual. So they share with us a model policy manual that their attorneys, everybody has gone through. In that manual, this policy is numbered 9100.
Okay,
Then we go through and we have to look and say, well, what policy do we currently have that says the same thing? Our current policy that says that is 9022. So I'm just trying to help make that connection.
thank you.
And just like any of the other policies any of the other parts of the policy, if we wanted to change the number, we could.
Yeah.
Okay,
There's nothing that's saying that we can't. It just is an organizing
It just
principle,
helps
helps
to-
us track
It's
it.
our cross-reference to say this is what we currently have in our manual, this is what their model policy
Okay.
says.
okay. I just never realized they had their own number. I thought they looked at our policy and said,
Yeah.
maybe you should make this change due to this legislation. So now I understand. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So then this new use and disposal of school property will add in that language that if it's under a certain dollar amount, that the superintendent has the ability to make that decision and not bring it forward to the board unless it's over $1,000, and then that will come forward to the board.
Okay.
Moving down, 1500P and 1500B. These would be new, and they go along with our current policy, the board meeting procedure policy. And this brings into effect House Bill 645 on the recall elections. And then it also brings into effect public comment. And so what we talked about at the start of the meeting, that needed to be changed prior to any action being taken. The public comment should come prior to action being taken. And so that procedure and then that board operating protocol is what the B stands for. That's what both of those would reference. Questions so far? Okay, so then 2500 and 2500F, they're going to address House Bill 710A, which established the Idaho Children's School and Library Protection Act. So this update to the library materials will address what that library act talks about, and the new law requires that books meet the legal definition of harmful to minors be placed in adults only section of the library. And so this takes into consideration the change in that House bill, which came into law. And then it talks about also that you have to have consent from parents. If we have that section, then the students can check out from that section.
Yeah, and we don't need to put in there that it'll be behind the desk or whatever. It's not gonna just be on the shelf.
Correct.
And many of these things, part of this policy, we had in place as part of our practice already to keep those kind of materials away from the students unless the parents were aware. But because of how the law was written, there are some specific things steps we have to make sure we're hitting. So it'll be some adjustment to what we do, but not a huge departure from what we're already doing.
It just removes all our discretion as far as that. These are mandates that we have to follow.
Well, discretion in the process. There is still discretion to the school, for the school district and the committee, I guess, whatever committee is formed, as to what is determined to be harmful to the student. But there's a whole process that has to be done to consider that. And that's what that law was looking at.
Yeah.
And that's a perfect segue to those next policies. So that 2530 is where that language comes in and tells us this is how we're defining harmful to minors. So it's the recommended language around what really qualifies as harmful to minors. And so that would be updates to current policy, but to include that new language.
And note that that is not just library materials, but all learning materials for those two policies.
Okay, and then as we move down to 3500, this was Senate Bill 1329, which requires that healthcare providers have parent consent before providing any health services to a minor. Obviously with exceptions of some emergencies. And so this would be an update to current policy. And then 3500F is the form that goes along with that. And so it's a recommendation of a form that can be utilized to align to that policy. And then 4105 and 4105F is Senate Bill 1361. And so that's what requires school districts to allow in-person public comment on agenda prior to taking final action. And so then the adjustment of that update will then have that trigger effect that we talked about at the beginning, where there's other policies that if this doesn't trump that, then we would have to do some cross-referencing and eliminate language in some of those other policies as well.
On the procedure
Yeah.
one, okay.
Well, and going back to our public comment earlier around 4110. If now we have a conflicting policy, then we can then bring 4110 and adapt that to align with.
Okay.
Now, these are all first readings, and so you'll notice that we've given you the model policy. And so as there's suggestions, as there's changes, that's what we're gonna look at in our second and third readings. And so during the second reading, we'll bring forward those adjustments. And so if you have suggestions for changes for that second reading, you can add those in as well.
Additionally, we'll be meeting with, for instance, we'll be meeting with our librarians between now and then to get input from them. We'll have meetings with our MEA for any of these that apply. Though I don't think there's on this round, but we'll still give them the opportunity to weigh in on anything they would like to have.
Is this part of policy? Just curious, when they come in and sign this?
Is that part of policy?
Is this
That
form?
form is not.
Okay, I'm just wondering if we need to add on to this form, about using names and just,
Yes,
I mean, would that be
Wise.
helpful?
it would be
Yeah.
wise, just so that the person that's giving that,
Just so
Knows
that
what the
it's there and we know we did that there?
yeah,
Can't single any student or.
Well, yeah, you can't, yeah, well, it's in our policy, so I think even
Yeah.
if you took verbatim out of our policy and put it on there, I think it would be,
And when you say all learning materials on the 2530 ones,
curriculum.
that's
Well.
curriculum, that's the media,
Any
Anything-
media that we're
audiobooks?
using
or-
for learning,
Okay,
dang,
Um,
scholastic news is, no, I'm just
yeah.
kidding.
But yes,
That's a
anything,
lot.
it is,
It's a
and
lot.
it establishes the procedure if somebody has a concern with what is being presented.
okay,
It just needs to be all inclusive to allow for that.
okay.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much.
See, it wasn't as bad as we thought it would be, Cindy.
No,
We still got 3 months.
But we need to move them all though, don't we?
Yes.
So the recommendation is to move them to the second reading. And then there will be a few more that will need to come as first readings next month, and then there will be second readings, because there's still
Okay.
something to be done outside. of
We know
this.
you're gonna have a whole page for us, but it'll be okay.
We're gonna try to pare it in as much as we can.
It's okay. I appreciate what you're doing with it, because sometimes that is tedious.
Well, and the majority of these are a result of legislation. It was a
Oh, yes.
very active legislative session that had a lot of things that needed to be updated.
Yes. And I imagine it will be next year too, so it's fine.
So we're trying to get through all these. before-
Nope, it's okay. It's good to be proactive as we can. So with that being said, I'd entertain a motion, and we can do them all at once, right, to move, because they're all going to a second reading, but you have to say every single policy number.
Boy,
So whoever's brave enough.
let me try. Again.
yeah, you can go ahead,
Okay.
if you want to.
So I move that we, and I'll list all the policies. We're gonna move all these policies from the first reading to the second reading, beginning with policy 9100, policy 1500P, as in Paul, policy 1500B as in Bravo, policy 2500, policy 2500F, policy 2530, policy 2530F, policy 3500 and 3500F, 4105 and 4105F. All of those move to the second reading.
Second,
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, let's move on to some more action items. I would entertain a motion to approve, or we're gonna table those.
We are tabling those, yep.
Yeah.
Approve or deny this handbooks. How's that?
can we just say, I make a motion that we table
Yes, that would probably be
Yep.
possible?
Go ahead.
or Approve that we table, the cross-country team request as well as the varsity volleyball team request for out-of-town trip
To the next meeting.
to the next meeting.
A
A
second.
second. that.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, next one.
I move that we approve the student handbooks for the Middleton High School, Purple Sage Elementary, Heights Elementary, and Middleton Academy.
Second,
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
aye.
Aye. All right. The next one,
I move that we didn't talk about this.
This is the.
The applied concepts?
Security.
we're just allowing
Oh,
Mark
I
to
read
finish
it wrong.
negotiating that.
The superintendent, I move that that we approve the superintendent to negotiate renewal of the contract with Applied Concept Security.
Second that.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And the last one.
I move that we approve the CTE building request for proposal, and I don't need to set a dollar amount or anything. Okay.
Second,
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, next one.
Do we have another person?
He's supposed to be calling me.
We won't be able to move in.
Nope, there he is.
Until.
Till we get him
Alright.
on phone.
Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Thank you. All
I
right.
can make a note to,
Yep.
make a note that
Yes,
Trustee
please.
Moore has joined the meeting at
We're just getting ready to go into executive session.
7:24.
Okay.
All right, go ahead. Somebody read that for us so we can go in.
I move that we go into executive session as per section 74-206, paren 1, paren B, Idaho Code to consider the evaluation, dismissal, or disciplining, or to hear complaints or charges brought against a public officer, employee, staff member, or individual agent.
A second.
Very good. Going by roll call.
Trustee Moore,
Yes.
trustee Wagner,
Yes.
trustee Powell,
Yes.
trustee Clark.
Yes.
Thank you, everybody. If you guys want to stick around, you can.
We'll pop it